Don't miss the inaugural All-American Cup Team Tennis Tournament, presented by Thomas J. Henry, at the Freeman Coliseum in San Antonio, Texas, November 11 through 13. The All-American Cup features 10 top men's U.S. players competing on 2 teams, East versus West, each captained by the greatest tennis doubles team of all time, Mike and Bob Bryan. You don't want to miss this. Brother versus brother, East versus West, best versus best. Tickets on sale now at allamericantenniscup.com.
All right, Pickle, it's Thursday, and my watch says it's Thursday, and so as a result, it's time to celebrate Dumb Thursday.
Texas Football Today is proud to present Dumb Thursday.
It's Dumb Thursday. Texas Football Today. And we are going to, this is when we kind of kick around a topic that's been on our mind for a while. And this is a little bit of a dicey one, I will admit, because this is one that gets people pretty fired up. Mm-hmm. And this goes back to 2021. 2021, when the NCAA lost a Supreme Court case in NCAA versus Alston that essentially allowed for players, athletes, to profit off of their name, image, and likeness, NIL, as has been known. It's the first time that really athletes at the college ranks, amateur athletes, so to speak, were allowed to profit off of being an actual athlete. Mm-hmm. It used to be that if you were an amateur, you couldn't make any money, which there were a lot of, I think we can all agree, there were a lot of really dumb things that were associated with that. That, like, if you happened to play softball at North Texas, mm-hmm. but you also, like, were a really good songwriter, mm-hmm. you could not profit off of your songwriting.
Correct.
Right. Things like that. Like, you couldn't monetize.
It has to be for your athletic ability.
You couldn't monetize your YouTube channel mm-hmm. if you played, if you played lacrosse for Western Kentucky. Right. I think we can all agree that was pretty dumb.
Yeah.
Your mileage may vary on whether or not that is enough compensation for athletes. I know I have my own particular takes, but that's not what this is about. Mm-hmm. What this is about NIL, and specifically as it relates to high school athletes. I want to go back. Do you remember the great? We were doing a show together. Mm-hmm. We were old enough to. Or you're old enough to do a show with me at that point.
I'm just old.
Do you remember the great Quinn Ewers panic?
Oh yes,
of
about
2021.
How when he decided to forgo his senior season, the first thing out of most people's mouth was, "This is the end of Texas high school football."
Oh yeah, there was a great panic about Quinn Ewers, because mm-hmm. Quinn Ewers, star quarterback, blue chip quarterback there at South Lake Carroll, mm-hmm. Decided to essentially forego his senior season at South Lake Carroll, graduate early, mm-hmm. reclassify, and enroll at Ohio State.
And not just graduate early as in December graduates like most athletes who are of that caliber do. He graduated a whole year early, technically calendar-wise, in May.
Yes, he did.
Or August after summer school, I think, is technically how they did it.
And the reason was, one of the reasons that was thrown about was that he was going to sign a very lucrative. The numbers got really wacky as far as what it was.
I think most people think it was $1 million. About
$1 million
for a kombucha company.
$1 million NIL deal, but he could not do that as a player at South Lake Carroll. We'll get into that in a moment. He could not do that, and so he said, "I want to cash in on this." This is a simplification. I'll be very clear. It's a much mm-hmm. more nuanced thing. But the narrative was he wants to be able to cash that NIL deal. He can't do that as a high school athlete. He can as a college athlete. So he essentially fast-forwarded mm-hmm. to get to college as quickly as he could by reclassifying into the class of 2021 and signing with Ohio State and enrolling at Ohio State and then cashing in his NIL deal. Okay. And I remember doing that show mm-hmm. and telling people, I promise you, this is an outlier.
Mainly, and honestly, just from a very fundamental standpoint, most student athletes do not have that number of credits. Like, he had to start working on all of those extra credits he was getting in high school his freshman or sophomore year.
Functionally, it became pretty clear, like in hindsight now, when you think about it, that he was at the very least planning to graduate early, like a lot of players, which is graduate in December, enroll early and stuff. And so he was already fast forwarding through one semester, right? And essentially what it kind of sounds like is he made a decision somewhere along the lines through summer school and through just that he made a decision, I'm going to fast forward through an extra semester.
Correct.
We sat here on the show and we said, don't panic. I promise you that this is going to be an outlier. This is not going to be something that happens all the time.
No.
And I don't think I can remember another player doing that.
No.
It's now been 2 years, basically.
There have been who was it? There was someone that did not play their senior season, but they didn't go to college. They just straight up
Jadon Blue.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah. He didn't enroll in college.
He didn't enroll in college. He just said, you know what?
Running backs get a lot of miles on them. Right. I'm not willing to put my body through another year that I don't need to. Was basically his reasoning.
He wants to go play the next level, and so as a result, I'm going to save the carries. Okay. The reason that Quinn Ewers had to do that is because presently Texas is one of the states in the union that does not allow for athletes, Texas high school football athletes, to engage in NIL activities. Now, one of the things that is interesting about Texas, is that this is not a UIL rule. This is not a UIL rule. This is a Senate bill.
Yes.
That the Senate Bill 1385 prohibited high school athletes from engaging in NIL activities. That basically it prohibits student athletes from monetizing their name, image, and likeness. Now, there is a bill going through the legislature right now to repeal that. We can debate that a little bit. That is, I don't pay all that much attention to the Texas legislature. I don't think it has the juice to get through. No. But we'll find out. You contrast that with a state like California. California does allow for players to be compensated for the name, images, likeness, so long as there's no recognition of the student-athlete's school logos, uniforms, and insignias. That is pretty standard for professional athletes. You watch like a commercial with Dak Prescott. Even if he's wearing a uniform, it's like it doesn't have the star on it.
It's a plain blue uniform.
It's like generic. It can look like a Cowboys uniform, but it won't have the Cowboys insignia on it.
Correct.
Things like that. There's a weird commercial where he's getting tackled by like the Real Housewives.
Yes.
Yeah. It looks like a Cowboys uniform,
It
and
does.
you see Dak Prescott, so you're like, oh, okay, it's.
But you will not see a star with the trademark symbol on it at all.
Exactly right. So, this gets into the debate as to whether or not Texas high school football athletes should be able to sign NIL deals. A lot of it goes back to the Quinn Ewers situation because there was that kind of panic of, oh my gosh, is this going to kill Texas high school football that we are not allowing our players to monetize their name, image, and likeness. I think I figured out that where I stand on it is that I don't actually care.
Yeah.
I don't, but I want to draw a real line here. First of all, I think if you're 18 years old, you should be able to enter into a job, into a contract. Like you're an adult, and there shouldn't be all that many more regulations that allow you to go and enter that. I do think, though, that there is a difference between the NIL deals that we're talking about. What I would prefer not to see, but I don't think I'm particularly against, would be somebody coming in and giving Nike coming in and giving a 5-star running back $1 million NIL deal. Because I think ultimately that is going to be a net negative for Texas high school football. I think that if you have this one like superstar on a team, then that may in fact hurt the sport as a whole. That one I would prefer not to see, but if I suppose get money, I don't want to be pocket watching, for them. That if you get it, I might grumble a little bit, but you shouldn't make that decision based on me. What I think I'm definitely in favor of, and what I wouldn't mind at all would be that if what's your favorite local restaurant in Atlanta?
China Walk.
China Walk.
If my buddy Michael from China Walk.
If China Walk wants to give the star quarterback for Llano High School $500 to tweet about how much he likes China Walk and maybe appear on some posters and stuff like that of like, hey, the Jake Pickle loves China Walk.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I think for me, because that is functionally what I think the majority of these deals would be. The majority of them would be modestly low-dough deals.
Mom and pop shops.
Local deals.
Yeah.
Right? It might be the local Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent.
Well,
right?
and at that point, you can even take it a step further and talk about how that's benefiting the economy of your local place. Like if they're tweeting about it and then people going through town say, oh, we're in Atlanta, let's go stop at China Walk because we heard so-and-so talk about it. You're funneling more money. Economically, it could work.
I don't think that hurts Texas high school football. I also don't think that would have some sort of major impact on team morale or anything like that.
Right.
I think that ultimately those types of deals I have no problem with. I think that especially if you're 18, you should be able to enter into that kind of contract and everybody can win. The big $1 million national deals make me a little bit tense simply because we are talking about high school athletes here. And we can talk about whether or not college athletes are amateurs. I think the difference between amateurism as a high school athlete and differences in amateurism as a college athlete
are two totally
very
different
different
things.
because college athletes are already being compensated in some way with a
scholarship.
And so as a result, I think they should be free to be compensated however.
Correct.
High school athletes is a little bit different because they're not being compensated. They're playing fundamentally for the love of the game, you would think. That, to me, is a real distinction. And I think that kind of gets lost in this conversation.
Right. Because technically, I think it's an on-off switch. Like, I think
Yes.
it's either going to be on or it's either going to be off. Like, I don't think that you could say, because realistically, you could think like, maybe it would be great if we said, okay, you can do $25,000 a year as your max NIL grab, and by the time you go to college, you would have $100,000 to put towards college, which is a reasonable college tuition. So it's like maybe, but it's that you can't regulate it that way.
No, and that's the thing. You can't put caps on it. You can't do anything like that. It would have to be an on-off switch. My ultimate, I think where I end up landing on it is I think I would prefer if they could sign NIL deals. I know coaches don't want it because we're doing a coaches survey on the survey or on our questionnaire, and overwhelmingly coaches don't want it. I think as a fan and as a neutral observer, and coaches are going to hate me for saying this, I don't think I have a problem with it. But I do think that there are some parts of it that would make me feel icky, and there are other parts of it that I think would be fine.
There are two things of how my brain works with this. One, I have a hard time even thinking about getting to the point where the athletes can get that, because my mind as a person who has parents in it that work in education, and obviously we spend a lot of time talking to coaches, there would need to be someone on staff that specifically handles NIL deals, because these head coaches don't have any more time on their hands to be able to handle all of that, to make sure that it's legitimate, to make sure that the taxes get taken out of it, to do all that. Like, they don't have enough time to do that. So if every single school district says, yes, we can have one person, we can hire one person on staff and we have the money to do that, then it's like, okay, then it can actually be regulated. Yeah. But teachers don't get paid enough as it is, and the thought of hiring another person to specifically handle that in every single school district, it's not feasible.
And the other thing about that is and I mentioned that high school coaches on our survey overwhelmingly against it, and I get that. There's no upside for coaches. There really isn't. That if you start allowing that is only going to make their job harder. Because even if you have, let's take the China Walk example. Even if you have one guy on your team who's making $100 from the local Chinese restaurant, you are then going to have to deal with him in the locker room and everyone else knowing that happened, and there being just a difference in that, and suddenly you have a superstar. And I know a lot of coaches want to build a culture of we're all equal, we're all pulling the rope in the same direction, right? So I get it. I absolutely get it from a coach's perspective.
Right, correct.
And I fully expect coaches to say, Tepper, you're 100% wrong on this.
Right.
And that's fine. But I do think that what I get back to is that if you're 18 years old,
yes, and
you do have this skill set, you should be able to capitalize on that skill set, because that is kind of what we've set up capitalism to be. That's just kind of where I'm at.
The other thing that always gives me like legitimate concern, if I am able to make it past just the fundamentally so many things would have to change to make it work. I'm not saying that I'm against it from an athlete perspective, but from a school district perspective. The other thing that makes me very nervous is, as much as I hate to say it, there are a lot of not good people in this world. There are a lot of grifters who will see the freshman that makes it onto varsity that is going to be a star for the next 4 years. They are 14 years old. Like, if you want to talk about there are crappy people out there that would go offer this deal. And as a 14-year-old, if I heard, we're going to give you $5,000, I'd be like, I'm rich, like it worries me, not for the athletes. I'm not worried about the Texas high school football athletes. I'm worried about the grown adults that would do them wrong. Like, that's where my concern comes into play.
I think that is a really valid point. And I think that you look at, I wish we had Ish in here. I think if you look at basketball with the AAU situation and stuff like that, that has gotten so wildly out of control.
Yep.
And with street agents and things like that. And I think that is probably the strongest argument against it, which is, if you allow NIL deals, you're kind of opening the door for the fox to get in the hen house.
Yep. And it's like crazy to say that I would trust a 14-year-old more than some of these adults, legitimately.
Well, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Is that there are, whenever there's something with eyeballs on it, people are going to want to make money off of it.
And there's just crappy adults out there.
Right. Absolutely. That's why, again, I go back to the idea of being 18.
Correct.
You're at that point, and one of the things that Texas high school football, I think, has done really well, the UIL has done, they've tried to toe the line of being as inclusive as possible, while also making sure to keep all of the, ne'er-do-wells, let's call it, the grifters, out of Texas high school football. There are some that sneak in, absolutely, but they have done a pretty admirable job of maintaining, between them and the Texas High School Coaches Association. That's why that straight line recruiting thing was such a big push for them. We want recruiting to go through the Texas high school coaches, because we know that they have the athlete's best interest at heart.
Right.
That is, to me, the best argument against the NIL deal.
Yeah.
That's why I think where I land on it is I don't have a strong opinion.
Correct.
If it were to happen, I'd be like, there are things about it that make me feel icky. But in the end, if you're 18, I don't have a problem with you.
Right, and that's the funny thing about being 18. My birthday's not till March. Yours isn't till June. You were not. You graduated when you were 17.
I graduated
bet.
when I was 17.
Yeah, and
so
it's like I played basketball, but guess what? Basketball's done on March 25th.
Yep.
Like, there's no more girls basketball left to play, so it wouldn't have worked.
Right, exactly. Anyway, I think this is one of those situations, one of those debates where I think there's reasonable arguments on both sides.
Correct.
I think in a real dumb Thursday moment, I think where I land on it is I'm like,
I'm not going to put that much thought into it until the conversation really happens.
Right, and for now, it's not legal in Texas.
Yeah. And I see the logistical side of it.
My read on it is that it's probably not going to be illegal in Texas for the foreseeable future. And I think that if you point to the Quinn Ewer situation as the reason to do it, I think that is a fallacious argument, because that's a
needle in a haystack,
singular example. So there you go. There's a little bit of dumb Thursday.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you would like more and to be notified when they come out, go ahead and click that subscribe button right down there. You can also watch Texas Football Today every day live at noon on TexasFootball.com, Facebook, Twitch, and right here on YouTube. For more of the best coverage of Texas football in the Lone Star State, go to TexasFootball.com/subscribe.